Hello and welcome to Strategy for Breakfast. As we know, it is the most important minute of the day. I'm David McGrath. I'm presenter and editor with GDS Group. And on our podcast, we were just recently talking to Pamela Uddin and Tom Stone, managing partners at React Marketing. And we talked a little bit about how we can be customer-centric. And I want to dive a bit deeper into your own journeys as managing partners of React Marketing, but also how you navigate the challenges of success, both here and at home. Because, of course, the thing I haven't mentioned is that you're also married, which is a different dynamic to what we usually see. So we can unpick some of those key moments. Pamela, Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here, David.
So we were really lucky to meet at our CMO EU Summit over in Norwich in the Netherlands. And you talked about digital first and everything else second. And it was a really well-received presentation within our concept room, really engaging with our audience. So thinking about that, are you able to share a defining moment within your careers that's shaped your understanding of what drives organizational success?
What a question that is as well.
It's a big one to start, yeah.
Go for it, Pamela.
No, I think I'm very joking. I'm happy to go.
You go first. It's okay, you can pass me, it's all good.
You know what? I think there's been so many. I don't think I can say that there's one defining moment that kind of really pinpointed for me kind of organizational success. I think both myself and Tom, we've had kind of corporate training backgrounds. So we kind of started kind of in the FMCG kind of global kind of corporations, and we got so much training kind of throughout kind of our 10 or 15 years been kind of corporate side first. And I think you gain an awful lot of understanding as to just in general how businesses and how successful businesses run. I think that gave us an awful lot of grounding for when we came and we started our own business. I think one defining moment for me was being able to identify when we were running the agency, we grew so quickly, right? We grew, just over 5 years, we've got a staff of about 50 people plus. And I think there was a defining moment in that growth where I realized that neither myself or Tom could do all of the work. We no longer had the control, the energy, or the capacity to do everything. And that was a real defining moment for me specifically, because it was at that point I really kind of came to terms with the fact was I was going to have to step back and lose some of the control, and I was going to have to entrust other people to come on that journey. And I think that was for me a real defining moment of, starting an agency, having it kind of small to medium scale, and then actually in order to get it to that next step of success in terms of like large growth, I needed to learn how to leave go. And hey, that's still a constant journey. I still think every day I get challenged on that by my staff. We have this open culture where we allow them to challenge us. If we're getting too involved, our staff will say, hey, back off, you're too involved. But I think that's one for me that has really, I suppose, defined the success within the agency for me personally. Tom, I know that's one for you as well, because I think stepping back from you is a harder challenge for you than it was for me.
It's tricky. It's really tricky because we, as a business, we really throw ourselves into the insights. So red, yellow, green, blue, and both myself and Pamela are very we're both red. That's kind of where the connection from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective is. But Pamela's more red, blue, and I'm more red, yellow. So I have a natural ability to want to throw myself into everything. And obviously, as the business gets bigger, you can't. So I think that there's probably two other moments that I build on. I totally agree with Pamela. The moment where you start to realize you can't do everything and you need to entrust on the other people around you. I think, and to build on that, I think also probably more so in the last 2.5 years, where we've kind of got over 20 people and now we're up at, up to 50. We're proactively bringing in people who are absolutely 100% better than myself and Pamela at certain things. And I think, and that is, as a leader, that can feel a little bit uncomfortable because you're like, okay, how can I give value to this person? And it is more from a leadership perspective and a management perspective. You're able to do that, and it could be structure that you support them. There's other ways you can support them. But I think that was a big moment, probably around about 2.5 years ago. We really started to see that. And then another moment, I think, that really defines success for an organization is when we take a step back and look at some of the people journeys that have occurred throughout the business, both from a personal perspective. So we've got one member of staff who has done almost every kind of big moment in her life. She's had now at React, whether that be getting married, first home, and she had back-to-back promotions, her first line management experience. She's helped set up a function here now. So I think just seeing those people examples is a real, a way of measuring success. And then ultimately, as people are now growing throughout their careers, for me, that's a real sign of success for a business, that we've, been sustainable to genuinely create careers here for people. I think it links into something I often say to our staff at, away days. At the end of the day, like, life is short. We only get one career, really. I don't want to get too philosophical, but we only do have one career. I always say to our staff, when you're 70, 80, and you might be going for a walk with a friend, I want you to look back on the work you've done here really proudly and reminisce really fondly of what you achieved here. That could be, I worked on this campaign that even to this day, I'm still extremely proud of. That for me also defines success of our people. Because ultimately, you want to be able to look back on your life and your career with those moments you're particularly fond of and particularly proud of. And we hope that they can achieve that whilst they're here at React, essentially.
So it's a really nice edict to have, isn't it? To want to support people through their careers and to know that you've done something outside of just a working environment. So they've not just made you money or got you clients. You've done something for them as well. Mm. And that kind of leads us on to that sustainable culture. And I think we mentioned a high challenge, low threat, which is what it sounds like you've got going on there. So what examples of particular strategies or cultural shifts have you seen that have led to some real significant success?
We're like super people led, right? I know, and I think that could be like a buzzword that a lot of agencies say, but we are actually like people led. We leave the people in the agency define the culture. We get them to grow the culture, take part in the culture. And I think that was one thing that myself and Tom, when we first started the agency, as Tom said, we spend so much time at work, like, over 50% of our lives are literally in work. And you want to make sure that the environment, the people that you work with, really, you can really thrive in that and you can come to work being your authentic self. And I think when we started the agency, it was all about how do we create an environment where you can be your authentic selves. And we realized that has to come from the top down. Me and Tom have to show up as our authentic selves. We can't always be perfect all of the time. We can't always be right. We don't want to come across that way. So as we grew the agency, it was really important for us to show up every day in our authentic way. And we did that from interview stage. Like, there's loads of different things that we do now. But when we started first, we really looked at our interviewing process and our hiring process, and it was about how we showed up in those interviews. Yes, you're there to interview a candidate and get the best possible person for that job, but it's also how we show up in that. We have to show up authentic, open. We have to talk about the weaknesses, the strengths. And I think for me, I always went into those interviews ensuring that I said, hey, look, I'm dyslexic, or I've got a stammer. And that just shows the authenticity, but also the vulnerability of me as a person. And I suppose that's what the agency is built on now. If you come through our doors, everyone is authentic. If we're, if there's an issue, we'll call it out. If we're going to celebrate, we celebrate as a team. There's never an I, it's always a we. And that was the structure, the foundation of how we built the agency.
Totally agree, Pamela. I think just to build on that as well, we have put in place processes to do exactly that, whether it be our, the flow of our weeks here. There are kind of defined moments where the team will get together, our scrum meetings, how we put together our decks for our clients. Like, it is very much a team environment. And as Pam said, no one's perfect. Over the years, we've made great hires, we've made, other hires, should we say. And I think, and that's okay, right? And I think, like, it's not going to be for everyone either, React. Like, it's not. And I think as long as I know, Pamela, we were speaking about this recently, but we always try and ensure that if it's not for you, that's all right. But we want to make sure that when you leave here, you're still like a better version of yourself, or you've learned something that you can then take forward in your life or into your career as well. So yeah, that's some of the structural pieces that we do to support that.
So you mentioned earlier on, which is, I think it's really good, and sometimes it can be lost from certain leadership teams, is that you need to surround yourself with people who are just better at the job than in that role. So how do you deal with that, and how self-aware are you when they need to go or when they do go? What's that like?
It's a great one. I think Pamela particularly will be able to talk to you about it mainly from a creative and production perspective, because I think like in terms of how we set the agency up, we acquired the production agency about 18 months ago. Like up until that point, we were doing social and we were doing content, which myself and Pamela were a bit more au fait with. I would say like that's more linked to what we were doing corporate side. I do think since the production agency has been acquired and we've integrated it, that has really been Pamela's part of the agency that she's grown. So I imagine, Pamela, from your side, you probably have more tangible examples of exactly that happening, right? Because you have to manage such a different variety of people.
Yeah, and it was a different skill set, eh? So we come from corporate backgrounds, we've worked in brand teams. So when it comes to developing a content strategy or a brand strategy for social, it's our core. We understand how to actually do that. When it comes to running a production agency, that's a completely different skill set. So we knew that there was a need there, and our clients were coming to us, and that was where the service was born from, where the clients were coming to us and saying, look, your content ideas and your content strategy is really great, but we can't get someone to complete it end to end where it matches the strategy. Can you do this? So I was like, Tom, there's a need here. I think we should go and buy a production agency. We started to work with a sister agency of ours where we said, right, we're going to partner with this agency and see how it goes, see what we can learn, and then hopefully buy the agency out, which we did. But it was still a whole different skill set. We had to hire in people from like the production area in itself into the agency and kind of just let them run. So we got a head of production in from Cause. She worked at Cause Fashion, the clothing brand, and she worked globally heading up their production team. We brought her in, and in the interview stages, I said to her, look, it's going to be a massive shift because you're going from this global international brand and you're coming to an agency and you're setting up from scratch. You're rolling up your sleeves. And I was very open with her. I said, look, I can come and help you problem solve. I can help with personal or career development, but what I can't help you with is the processes and structures, because I do not have that experience, but I will support you as much as I can. And you kind of just have to allow the process. You have to give into that. That is quite hard as an entrepreneur, right? Because as entrepreneurs, all of us, we love the control. We need to keep the control. We feel frantic if we don't know what's going on all of the time. But I think that has allowed me, this process has allowed me to open up, because then I've sat in the meetings with her and I've been like, Christ, there's things here that I just do not know anything about, and she knows everything, and it's humbling. And you have to get used to the feeling, right? You have to sit with that and get comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Definitely. And I think also, Pamela, I think a key thing you just said there is I don't think you can approach that arrogantly. I think you have to almost go into it being like, I'm not going to know everything here. This person is going to know more than me, but there'll be bits that obviously they can learn from you too. But I think just ensuring that you are showing up humbly as a leader, particularly when you do bring on someone of that expertise, is absolutely critical for their success and for them to feel comfortable, right? You bring them in to add value to the business. You don't want to, you're not bringing them in to completely change everything they've learned previously. You bring them in because of what they've learned previously,
Yeah. And you're showing up, and that's really important, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're showing up for them, and you're making that effort. So sort of, you're almost recognizing that they show up every day. They are there every day to sort of support you in your role.
Absolutely.
And so, I alluded to at the start, your dynamic is unique. It is somewhat unique. It's not something we necessarily see all the time. So how have you seen that narrative evolve, and have you had to make different considerations with your teams that other leaders might not have to have done?
That is a loaded question with a lot of answers. How long do you have?
No, I love it.
I mean, I think it took us the bones of, I'd say, Tom, 2 years to really work out the dynamic of how we show up in work. I think the interesting thing with myself and Tom is we actually met in work. So we both worked at Unilever on the brand team, and we both worked within the skincare team. So that's how we met each other. And I think with our careers, we always stayed within FMCG. So when we were having problems or issues at work that we needed to solve with the brand, we'd always come to each other and we'd say, right, we've got this thing, whether it's going on with the P&L or with innovation or equity can you help? So we've always had a dialogue around work, and I think the foundation of the relationship we have is built on that. It's built on work and helping each other out. So I think that makes a great partnership. But I think for the first 2 years of working together in an office environment with staff was challenging, because me and Tom, we're quite hybrid, which means, we're quite passionate, and we get really heightened about things and we talk about things. And, when you're at home in the comfort of your kitchen and you're discussing a business strategy, if you're getting quite heightened or quite passionate, that's generally okay. Because, we know each other and we've got that, comfortableness between us. But when you're doing that in an office environment with staff members, so we've had to learn our communication style has to differ when we're in the office and we're in front of kind of our staff. But I think we've grasped that, and I think we understand that now. And I think our staff is more understanding of us now as well, because I think there's less pressure on us now than there was back then, because the agency is established now. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of, I think the dynamic of male and female as well. I always found myself comparing me to Tom. I always wanted to show up the same way that Tom always did. And I think it's just maybe as I've got older, I've come to the realization that, being a female with my hormones on a 4-weekly basis, my energy is not going to be the same every single day, every single week. So, I've learned a bit around that as well, in terms of some days, Tom could show up nearly every day and give absolutely everything. But some days I just don't have the energy, and, I have to get kind of comfortable with that. They're just a few things from my side, but Tom, I'm sure you've got loads more examples.
No, I think that's a really good question. I think particularly in the early years, there was a lot of kind of, playing each other off each other a little bit came from our staff. And I think as we've kind of grown as an agency, things like, getting firmer around HR policy and bringing in professionals within that space has really, really helped, actually, because there's a lot of pressure there, right? And I think people can play on the emotional link that obviously myself and Pamela had, and I think there's more when there was less amount of staff. Actually, there was more instances of that. Now, that could have been us also going through it for the first time, and we've got a little bit more well versed in what to do in those situations. But there was definitely a bit of that going on. And what I'd also say is, I think we're very open with our staff. Like, we don't hide the fact that we're married. We don't hide the fact that we're married really with pretty much all of our clients as well. So I think that it goes really back to the core of React about bringing your authentic self to work. Like, we wouldn't be bringing our authentic self to work if we pretended like we didn't know each other. We are married at the end of the day. So I think that kind of bit we wanted to bring in nice and early. But I definitely think, to Pamela's point, I think the communication style, we can probably be a little bit more abrupt and honest, shall we say, with each other versus other members of staff. So I think when we do have those kind of conversations, we are trying to, where possible, potentially to have it in a slightly, a little bit more private environment. Like we do have, just over the last kind of 3 or 4 months, actually, we've got our own mini kind of office space, which has which has helped us. So there are kind of like particularly high intense conversations. We can just go a little bit away from some of the like slightly more kind of younger members of the staff and that sort of thing. So we have physically tried to put in place a couple other bits of support on that communication journey as well.
Are your teams comfortable and confident with the future? Because obviously the future for you at home, the future for you personally, and the future for the company are now interlinked, aren't they?
It's a very pertinent question, actually, at the moment, because like myself and Pamela, we're looking to build a family together, and of course, and we've been open with our staff on that. We've got staff members going through a similar journey. We've got people coming up to pat leave and that sort of thing coming up, and various other stuff happening. So we are, I think our staff look on that they'll know that the hires that we're making in certain part of the business is to support on that journey for us, personally as well as professionally. I think the big thing is, if we weren't married and we were just like 2 other co-founders, that financial pressure would be halved, right? Because at the end of the day, if React doesn't work for us, that is quite literally myself and Pamela's mortgage, right? Like, it's not that it's my mortgage and then it's Pamela's mortgage. It is literally our livelihoods are so linked to the growth of React and the ability for React to then give us the kind of life that we have, that neither myself or Pamela, when we haven't got, masses of financial backing. We've built this in blood, sweat and tears. We've had no financial backing whatsoever to get to this point, which we're very proud of. But it also means that, we are probably slightly more heightened when it comes to business performance, because it directly impacts our lives as well. But to go back to your question, I think what we're trying to do from a resource perspective is to try and build the right environment around us, whether that be people, but also the actual culture and the environment, to allow that personal family growth, as well as, of course, the professional growth to continue as well. Pamela, I'm not sure if there's any other builds from your side on it.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It comes back to being authentic and open and honest. Like, we've got a team of 50 downstairs, and I think we are like a family. Like, that's how we operate. So I think being open in terms of, our leadership team know that we're family planning, and they know that I am going to have to take a step back, and we put in place things like, right, what type of resource do we need to be able to help fill that gap? What are the reports, maybe extra reports, that we now have to put in place on a monthly basis, because we won't have access to Pamela as much. But then it's also a very open conversation between myself and Tom of terms of, I'm dropping some work, so what's he going to have to pick up now? So he's going to have to lean in double time into the agency. Therefore, my expectation then of him at home with baby, touch wood, is going to be different, right? Because it's not like a normal dynamic. So it's, for us, I think it's always about having those open, kind of self-aware conversations, and then making sure our staff is on that journey. And I think that's why then our staff never feel nervous. They never feel apprehensive about where is the agency going, what is the growth. Like, every single year, like, we run the agency like what I would say a corporate. We have quarterly team away days where we talk about the growth of the agency, we talk about the targets, then we talk about the culture and how to enhance the culture, then we talk about the resource plan and where we're going to hire next. That is all an open conversation, and that helps the whole agency feel like they're coming on that journey. They feel a part of it, but then they don't feel nervous because they know exactly where we're going, and that all really helps.
Tom, Pamela, I could speak to you for hours and hours and hours. It's been an absolutely fascinating discussion. I really can't thank you enough, and I really wish you the best of luck in the future as well, because I know you're going to do some really great things. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
David. Loved it.
So I hope you've enjoyed watching Strategy for Breakfast. Obviously, for more content, including episodes where we talk about other areas with other leaders, well, please head over to Strategy for Breakfast on wherever you might consume your podcast, Apple, Spotify, or if there are other things out there, I don't know. And obviously, you're there to hear how our guests overcome their barriers. So please do follow, like, and share. And if you'd like to look at any events or anything that's coming up for GDS, pop to gdsgroup.com and it's all there. But that's it. We'll see you next time on Strategy for Breakfast.